Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. You can ask me anything that you like about politics. That is what we are doing here today. So if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you don't know all that much about it. I was really intimidated by politics when I first started getting into it, so I like to make myself available to people to answer their questions about politics, and there's not going to be any judgments, there's not going to be any debates. It is just going to be good faith answers to all good faith questions. I didn't know a lot about politics when I was growing up, and when I started learning about it, I was always really nervous about asking questions because I didn't want people to think that I was dumb, and I didn't want people to judge me for my questions or my political beliefs. And there's going to be none of that here because I did not like how that felt, and so I'm not going to make other people feel like that as well. So yeah, you don't got to worry about if I ask this question, he's going to think I'm some sort of MAGA lunatic, or if I ask this question, he's going to think I'm some sort of cuck libtard. There's no judgments here, regardless of what you ask me. If you are further to the left than me or further to the right than me, there's not going to be any judgments whatsoever. MuzzKing44, good afternoon to you as well. So yeah, if you got a question about politics, just throw it into the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Let's see here. Larissa1313 says, with all of the Dems looting of our tax dollars, how and anyone support the Dems? So I do not believe that your question is factually accurate, Larissa. So I'm assuming that you're talking about the looting of the tax dollars as like all these things that Elon Musk and Doge are saying that they are finding as far as like government corruption is concerned. USAID is not that. USAID is a program that helps people, and it also helps Americans in addition to helping people overseas. USAID helps keep Ebola out of this country. So I would just encourage you to get your news from a different source, because everything that Elon Musk is saying about the things that Doge is finding, a lot of them are untrue, and even the ones that are true are like grossly inflated. He'll say that he saved us $3 billion when it was actually like $500,000 and shit like that. Let's see here. Ruyoyi Yuli 3 says USAID is a CIA cutout. They fund regime coups. That is completely inaccurate. USAID is the way that we keep people from falling into the clutches of terrorist organizations by providing food and building schools and hospitals in places that are, underserved, so that they don't have to then go to terrorist organizations and say, hey, we're starving, we need a school, we need a hospital, etc. Let's see here. Raymond Batista says, any update on Doge dividends? I do not believe that it is paying any kind of dividends. Let's see here. Dan Desimone says, how do you know everything? I don't know everything. I just know a lot of things about politics, and it's because I read the news and I keep abreast of things. One Love says, what are your credentials for this? I know a lot, and I read a lot, and I listen to the news and political podcasts, and I'm you can pay attention to me or you can not pay attention to me. It's completely up to you. Standroid says, not strictly political, but arguable. People need to actually learn how to debate and not just yap. I don't really think there's any value in debates where, we're watching all these debates happening here on social media between like left-wing people and right-wing people, and then they just yell at each other, and then they cut up the video, and then both sides go away and they say, I completely destroyed that fucking ding-dong in that debate that I just had. But also the presidential debates are complete and utter nonsense also, because, there's no substance to anything that gets said there. One side just lies their head off, and the other side tries to do their best to be informative, and then the entire thing gets judged on the performance element of it. Like, who seemed cooler and more relaxed? Like, that's the person who won, it's nonsense. I find them to be substanceless, whether they are presidential debates or just debates between random people here on social media. Let's see here. Quisling the Magnificent says, yeah, sure, we'll just follow whatever you say. Get the fuck out of here. You don't have to be here, buddy, if you don't want. Let's see here. Corey says, yeah, the debates are for the people. I don't know that they are for the people. Nick Lilly says, the Dems need a good leader. Crockett, AOC, etc. aren't the answer. They need to focus on the midterms. I disagree with that. I think Crockett and AOC are great, and I prefer the progressive wing. It also seems like they're doing a better job of getting out there and talking to people about what's going on in the Trump administration and all the various things that they're doing that are both illegal and hurting people. So yeah. But yeah, as far as focusing on the midterms is concerned, I completely agree with that. And I think that part of that is us. I think that we have the agency here in trying to convince people to vote for Democrats and convince people to vote against the Republican Party and the people in the Republicans in Congress who have been completely spineless and allowing Trump to just run ramshod over them. It's their job to make sure that these programs that they voted for, that they created, are able to get their funding and maintain their staffing. And the fact that they're just letting Trump take that power away from them, it is a unbelievable dereliction of duty on their part. And they should suffer consequences at the ballot box for that. Pierre 4 on Depop says, calling Republicans spineless is so rich. I mean, it's accurate. I don't know what your argument against that is. Tony Robbie says, I want to see one person lower our national debt. Could care less about the party. If that's something that's important to you, I would vote for Democrats because Democrats have a much better record with lowering the deficit than Republicans do. Quisling the Magnificent says, ramshod doesn't exist. Isn't that the expression? Run ramshod? Isn't that the expression? Parker said, did you hear about America going on the Human Rights Watch list? Yeah, every, global institution that judges countries based on how free they are, based on how accurate their elections are, based on how corrupt their government is, based on how well they take care of their citizens. All of those, organizations are downgrading America right now, and that is terrifying, and it should concern everybody. Nay says Democrats won't be in control for a long time. If we win the midterms, then we could potentially be in control of Congress, and that would give us a lot of power. Let's see here. All right. Any other questions, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. For those of you who are just here, there is, there are a lot of places that you can go to learn about politics, but this is the only judgment-free zone, guys. I'm not going to roast you. I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to tell you that you're stupid or mean or a bad person for believing the things that you believe. So long as you ask a question, you will be treated with respect here, and there's no such thing as a dumb question, so it can be as simple as you like. Steven DeSanto says that's a big if. I don't think so. I think that we have momentum. We're on the right side of history. People are activated. They don't like what Trump is doing. And we've been doing really well in the midterms elections since Trump came on the scene politically. Even though Biden was not doing well in popularity during the midterms in 2022, the Democrats still did a lot better than was predicted. So, I don't think that we should call it a day and just assume that we're going to crush it. I think that we should all do the work of making sure that we get out the vote and convince people to vote for Democrats in the midterms. But yeah, it's not a big if. It's, it's 50-50 at this point. Steven DeSanto said, just like Kamala was doing well. Kamala was doing well. Name isn't Nick says, I got a question. All right, ask it. Mr. Intro Politics says, what do you think of the U.S. Resume sending aids to Ukraine? I think it's the right thing to do. And I think that it is proof of political pressure working. Because if Trump and Elon Musk had their druthers, then they would cut off all assistance and just start sending money and weapons to Russia instead. But the fact of the matter is that people yelling at their representatives and, people in, both the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress yelling at the Trump administration about how necessary this is. You got ding-dongs like Marco Rubio coming out there and saying and towing the Trump line in public, but then behind the scenes, like, he's doing the work to make sure that Ukraine does not fall to Russia. For as much as I dislike Marco Rubio as a human being, like, he is on the right side of that issue, except when he's, saying things on the news. Let's see here. Bitnevo says the Ukraine ceasefire seems like a setup. Tomorrow Trump will claim Ukraine isn't down. Yeah, well, he lies about everything, so. Tim Huff says, thoughts on the future of the Democrats? Where do they go from here? I honestly don't really care what their messaging strategy is going forward because they get yelled at no matter what they do. They are Schrodinger's political party in that at all times they are both too far to the left and too far to the right and doing too much and doing too little. Representative Al Green was shouting during the joint address of Congress. and people said it was too divisive, but they also said that every Democrat should have done exactly that. So yeah, I don't really care. I think that we have this system set up where we can vote for our political leaders. We can vote in the primary to decide who are the Democrats that are going to be representing us in the general election and potentially in government. And the reason why people have this attitude about like the Dems being this force that they are the ones that are in control of winning elections or losing elections, or they're the ones who decide who the nominee is, it's because people aren't engaged in politics and they don't recognize that they have the power to help elect the people that they like. And if they don't get that person, then they still have to recognize like we're fucking adults here, and it is still better to vote for a Democrat, not your favorite Democrat, than to vote for a Republican. Let's see here. Amelia S. says, to be honest, I feel like Trump is just trying to troll everyone by starting this, then saying, like, when threatened. I mean, it's all chaos, and it's all, trying to make people feel despondent and powerless. It's bullshit. He's a liar. He's an idiot. And I just hope that the message is getting through, that we should not be paying attention to the things that he says because he's a liar. And that we should be calling out the chaos of this administration and the fact that they're hurting so many people. And yeah, hopefully we can run the table during the special elections in April. If you live in Florida or New York, make sure that you vote in the special elections in April. And yeah, let's fucking run the table during the midterms, and then we can fucking put a stop to this, illegal nonsense that's going on. Tony Robbie says, what if there were no political parties and everyone was an independent? I mean, potentially, that there could be some, there could be some value there. But at the same time, the parties are a helpful shorthand for what a person believes in. If you are a Republican politician, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to be on the side of the fossil fuel industry and billionaires, and you're going to say that the 2020 election was stolen, and you are going to be anti-abortion and anti-protecting the environment and anti the poor and anti-marginalized communities, etc. If you're a Democrat, I can generally tell that you're going to be pro-union, pro-worker, pro-environment. You're going to want to do something about climate change. You're going to want to tax the rich. You're going to be trying to protect people's civil rights. I think there's value in that shorthand, even if people have some very legitimate criticisms of the two-party system. Let's see here. Heavy Rock Lifter said, should be a cold take question, but should kids eat free at school? Yeah, why shouldn't they? Let's see here. Steven DeSanto says, Dems aren't in control. That is completely accurate. Bo Hick V Devfev says, when did you know Biden had dementia? I don't think that Biden has dementia. I think he's just extremely old. Name Isn't Nick says, I know the tariffs are bad short term, but would they not help a ton in the long term? So that's a really interesting question. My name isn't Nick, because every economist has been calling their shot regarding these tariffs in the short term. Regarding, it's going to ruin our relationship with our allies. It is going to make us a less trustworthy partner on the global stage. It is going to increase prices for Americans. It is going to start a trade war. It is going to, depress our economic futures, because since Canada will be buying less American products the same way they will be buying less Canadian products, there are small businesses here in America that were relying on being able to sell to Canada and other countries that they're not now going to be able to. So yeah, are we saying that potentially there could be like positive knock-on effects to our GDP cratering and being closed off from the global marketing network where other countries are going to be trading valuable resources with each other, and we're going to be left behind as far as like technological advancements go, in addition to our economies being left in the dust? Like, I don't think so. I think that these short-term harms they just continue. Like, they just go forward. Like, what's the plan? We're just going to be like North Korea and completely shut our country off from global trade? For why? Like, what's the benefit there? What are we going to do? We're going to add some jobs because we're going to build some factories here? Okay, well, in 8 to 10 years when those factories get built, everybody that could have helped will have starved, Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see the economic model where that happens. I see no sincere, serious, non-MAGA economists saying that that's the case. Like, it just seems like a big if, maybe, kind of, sort of, hopefully, but I just don't see it happening. Let's see here. Wade Hilt says North Korea was shut off from global trade because of the USA. Yeah, it wasn't a perfect metaphor, but, my point remains the same. User Whole Bunch of Numbers says, I'm not anti-environment just because I don't believe we have irreparably destroyed our planet. Okay, well, the idea of irreparably destroying the planet, I think, is probably where our miscommunication is, because, any damage is bad in the short term and the long term. We are putting our global climate in chaos by, putting all this greenhouse gases into the earth, which is going to threaten our food supply. It's going to make storms worse. It's going to make diseases worse. We're already seeing this stuff happening. Like, climate change is here right now. Additionally, when we protect the environment, we protect ourselves. So, when you allow a company to pump a lot of pollution into the air, we all breathe that in and we become less healthy. And when you allow a company to dump a bunch of waste into our rivers and shit like that, then our food gets contaminated and our water gets contaminated and we all become sicker because of that. So yeah, just because you don't believe that the planet has been irreparably harmed, if you're still voting for Republicans, you're still voting for poisoning our air and our water and making climate change worse, which threatens the health of human beings. So I'm not really sure what your vibe is here, my man. Let's see here. Mike Nunez says, my question is, are the U.S. tariffs equal to the tariffs on USA by other countries? That I don't know. It's more like, first of all, the tariffs are like a moving target. Like, Trump is saying the tariffs are on, then the tariffs are off, then these companies are exempt, now they're not exempt, now they're pushed to April 1st, now they're not pushed to April 1st, and then companies are doing countries are doing their retaliatory tariffs, and then those tariffs get reversed, or sometimes they don't get reversed, or sometimes they get decreased. So I don't know if any human being has that number right now. Maybe if it was much more stable, if we had like an actual stable genius in charge, maybe we would know those numbers, but we don't right now, because it's changing by the minute. Let's see here. Darkest Brandon says it's called The Art of the Deal. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing great at The Art of the Deal. Like, we're not getting anything right now. Everybody's just suffering, and they're mass firing veterans, and there's a fucking measles outbreak in 2 states, and a TB outbreak, and fucking bird flu, and the food costs keep on going up. Like this deal does not seem to be going good for us. Let's see here. User Whole Bunch of Numbers says, we should take care of our planet, but they have an agenda. Who funds these studies? Well, you know that every study that says that climate change wasn't real was funded by the oil and gas companies, right? So I trust scientists who don't have an agenda, who just want to get to the truth, more than I trust a bunch of fucking studies that were paid for by fossil fuel industry so that they can justify continuing to pump a bunch of poison into our atmosphere, Let's see here. Murphs says, you think the U.S. needs a reform of the system, move away from the two-party system? So I don't think that the two-party system is responsible for all the ills that people place on it. I think that we could probably have a better system, but I don't think that it's the reason why, people ascribe like all of the chaos and all of the dysfunction of our government to the two-party system, and I think that's inaccurate. Lagoon Wetland says, do you work? Yes, I am a touring stand-up comedian. Deidre says he wears a beanie because of climate warming. No, I'm wearing a beanie because my hair looks terrible. I just got back from the road and I need a haircut desperately. Let's see here. CM Hunk says the two-party system is 100% responsible for the lack of change. First of all, there hasn't been a lack of change. There's been a ton of change. It's all over the fucking place, man. And the fact that the idea that nothing has changed is insane and false and sus. So yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Murph says, yeah, but it's not democratically healthy. Two parties take its turn to run the country. I just think there are bigger problems. I think our media environment, I think misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, money in politics, I think those are way bigger problems than just having two, ascendant political parties. Let's see here. Aaron says, can't wait for the recession. It's basically here already. Rob Ziegler says, Harris wanted to take my Second Amendment away. No, she didn't. She was a gun owner. I have no idea what you're talking about, Rob Ziegler. How many times do Republicans have to tell you that Democrats are going to take your guns away, and then Democrats don't take your guns away, and then Republicans say they're going to take your guns away, and then they don't? Like, when is this going to click to you that this is Republican bullshit that you're buying into? Rob Ziegler says, Trump all the way. So yeah, that's an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but just ask a question, be part of the conversation. User a whole bunch of numbers says prior to the last 500,000 years, the CO2 levels were actually much higher. User a whole bunch of numbers. Yeah, you're just getting your information from right-wing sources. You know, like everything that you're hearing are cherry-picked facts to make it seem like the problem is not as bad as it is, or that the problem doesn't exist at all. Please get your news from a different place. I don't want to just debate you about whether climate change is real. Just like look outside, man. I lived in New York City for 20 years, and there was significantly less snow on the ground in my last year in New York than in my first year in New York. People that grow food are having to grow their food further north because the climate is different. We can all look outside and see, oh my God, the storms are worse. The diseases, there's more diseases. They're going fucking crazy these days. All the things that the climate scientists said was going to happen are fucking happening, you know? The polar ice caps are melting, you know? Like, why are we arguing about 500,000 years ago and who funded the studies and shit like that? Like, just look outside. This is on my list of things I don't need scientists to tell me about because I can look outside, because I can see, you know? Rust in Peace says, how did Obama visit 57 states? I have no idea what Republican nonsense that is, but that is not a story that exists. User a whole bunch of numbers says, not a good argument. Okay, well, I don't know where you live, but the climate is way different now everywhere that I have lived than it used to be. Murph says the 24 election was god awful. The Democrats have no policy, so then you have to vote for a felon. That's not accurate at all, Murph. The Democrats had a lot of great policies. They had great policies during the Biden administration, and they were going to continue those policies during the Harris administration. She had a wonderful platform, and I can argue this 10 ways from Sundays. But yeah, you know, if you want to, you believing that the Democrats didn't have a platform is evidence that propaganda and misinformation is ascendant, and that people need to get their news from not social media. User a whole bunch of numbers says, yeah, because you're ignoring that it was a fact, lol, you called it propaganda, it's true. Yeah, you're not hearing good faith, user a whole bunch of numbers. Sorry, you're out of here. Git Crickhamson says, why do people still think that the Democrats, Republicans aren't the same cult? Because they're not the same cult. They're vastly different. Different things happen when people elect Democrats versus when they elect Republicans. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because people voted for Democrats and Barack Obama. Similarly, there are women who are dead today because of abortion bans that are only possible because people voted for Republicans and Donald Trump. The platforms are different. The politicians are different. If you look at life expectancy and crime rates in blue states versus red states, there are vast differences between the two. So you can miss me with that both parties are the same shit. You can miss me with that nothing ever changes shit. You guys, you know, I'm here doing the work. You know, like I'm glad I'm here to be batting down all these false narratives. But just like, please, you know, get your news from somewhere else. I'm begging you. Let's see here. User a whole bunch of numbers says, can you name all these great policies the Biden administration had? Sure. Let's see here. The Inflation Reduction Act brought inflation down from 9% to 2.4%. It was also the largest investment in renewable energy in our nation's history. We were revitalizing dying small towns with good, safe, clean, well-paying climate jobs. And the Trump administration is canceling all of that. The Biden administration lowered healthcare costs for seniors and for the rest of us. They capped the cost of insulin. They capped the cost of asthma inhalers. The Trump administration has reversed those policies, so now all of our healthcare expenses are going up. Congratulations, everybody. Let's see here. What else? He was the most pro-union president since FDR. He walked the picket line with the auto workers union. No president has ever done that before. He successfully negotiated paid sick days for the rail workers union, which is the reason why they wanted to strike in general. Let's see here. The PACT Act expanded healthcare benefits for veterans. And now the Trump administration is mass firing veterans from the government, and they are cutting access to veterans' health benefits. So congratulations, everybody there. Let's see here. The Chips and Science Act brought high-tech manufacturing back to the United States, and now with all of these global tariffs that the Trump administration he is reversing all of those gains, and now we're going to be, decades behind in technological manufacturing, because we're just going to be out of the loop, and we're not going to have access to as many rare earth minerals and shit like that. Let's see here. The first bipartisan infrastructure bill in over a decade, the first bipartisan gun control legislation in over a decade. I could go on, but he nominated Lena Khan to the Federal Trade Commission, and she was, bringing the hammer down against monopolies, which is part of the reason why costs were so fucking inflated. So yeah, am I registering anything here, guys? Are we learning things? Bethany Wester says, is capitalism the problem? Capitalism is part of the problem, that's for sure. We don't have pure free market capitalism here in this country. We have what's called crony capitalism, where if you are friends with the people in power, then you can lobby them to have regulatory capture so that your company can do better than other companies. We also have privatized industries that should be nationalized, like the healthcare industry. The fact that there's a profit motive in healthcare is completely insane, and it is the reason why we're the only industrialized nation where people go bankrupt because of healthcare costs and shit like that, and people can't get the care that they need. Monopolization is a big part of what is wrong with the American model of capitalism, and it is the Republican model to allow monopolization to happen because they wanted to have a laissez-faire, hands-off attitude towards monopolization. But capitalism isn't evil in and of itself. Capitalism can work in conjunction with other types of financial models like communism and like socialism. There is communism and socialism here in America. I think we could use a little bit more. Like the federal government should be incentivizing companies to be employee-owned. There are a handful of employee-owned businesses here in America, and they all do great. And it's one of those rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. Like the CEO does great, and the secretaries do great. Like they all share in the profits. Similarly, we could use more socialism in this country. For example, socialized healthcare would be a lot better. We pay taxes to have our roads paved and have a fire department and shit like that. That is socialism right there. All right, so let's see here. Says, can you explain what is going on with the Board of Education? The Trump administration is trying to close the Department of Education because they like to hurt marginalized groups. And the Department of Education, mainly what they do is they provide funding for different types of programs and accessibility for people that come from low-income households, or people that come from English as a second language households, or people with disabilities. So if you have a child with autism or is blind or needs a wheelchair, the Department of Education helps all of that. The Republican Party wants to get rid of it because they don't give a shit about marginalized communities. ADD over on Twitch says, my question is, why are your family bears? My family are not bears, thank you very much. We're quite skinny, so I guess we're otters. Let's see here. Mike Hunt says, is this Gary Vee? No, it is not. I don't have even close to the amount of money that he has. Nature is Art says, are you kidding me? You've never been to my state then, obviously. What state is your state, Nature is Art? I've been to every state, actually, except for Alaska, so, I probably shouldn't have said that. I probably should have called you on your nonsense. I probably shouldn't have admitted that first. But yeah, I've been to every state. I'm a touring stand-up comedian. I performed in every state except for Alaska. VO Club says, tax cuts for the 1% or nah? Nah. The rich people need to pay more in taxes, Let's see here. Shelley says, the Department of Education fails to help smaller school districts. I don't know if that's the fault of the Department of Education. It seems like they are the ones providing that funding, That artist Smith says, I have a question. All right, ask it. Let's see here. Mooly Dog says, profiting from war is wrong. I agree with that. Don Nelson says, employee-owned is not the same as government-controlled. Okay. I don't know what the point is that you're making there. Are you trying to say that it's not communist or socialist? Because, I think I was pretty specific about what I was saying, man. I did not make that claim. Roman Saints says, as a poor man, how can I profit from this upcoming recession that was set up by the Republicans? You want to make a bet that the market is going to continue to crater? If that is a bet that you want to make, then there are ways that you can make that bet by shorting, ETFs that follow the market and stuff like that. I'm not going to advise you to do that specifically because it is a risk. It is a gamble. But that is how a human being could potentially profit from a recession. First time, Esther Alan over on Twitch says, hello. Hello back. ADD says, if the Berenstein Bears aren't bear, what the fuck kind of moose are they then? Those are questions about politics, ADD. So yes, I know what my last name is. I've heard this joke my whole life. All right, let's see here. Blake Theodore says, do you support socialism even though it's clearly failed in marketplace of ideas? I don't know that socialism has failed in the marketplace of ideas. Blake Theodore, how do you feel about the fact that capitalism has failed? We have worse income inequality now than ever before. People can't afford housing. They can't afford food. They can't afford health care. There's never been a socialist country, so we don't know if socialism works or does not work. Trickle economics we know doesn't work. Are you willing to give up on that shit? That artist Smith says, why in the last 3 decades all recessions have been under Republicans? Because Republicans are not as fiscally responsible as Democrats. They cut regulations, which are the ways that we avoid recessions. And they're bad in the economy, everybody. Bethany Wester says EPA is rolling back 31 policies. Sigh. Yeah, that's what happens when you put fucking polluters in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. You know, you need to vote for people who are going to nominate for the head of the EPA somebody who actually wants to do the job of the EPA. And you want to nominate somebody to Health and Human Services who actually gives a shit about people's health and knows something about it, you know, like a doctor would have been good. Let's see here. Key Gas says, are you a liberal? Yes, I am. I mean, I don't really care what you want to call me, liberal, progressive, Democrat. Like, I'm one of them lefty things, you know? I call myself a progressive. I feel like that's the most accurate to my political beliefs, but I really don't care if you call me a lefty or a liberal or a leftist or a Democrat or whatever. Let's see here. Blake Theodore says, I don't support trickle-down economics, but capitalism is the most efficient way to run your economy. You know, I'm not going to argue with this, Blake Theodore. Like, my whole thing is voting for Democrats because trickle-down economics does not work. Democrats are not inherently anti-capitalist. I believe that we can have a system that works capitalism with socialism with communism. And I don't know if you're arguing against that or not. I don't know if you vote for Republicans or not. But yeah, that's my vibe here, man. That's what we're doing. Let's see here. Sauce Boss says, do you think... Oh, you know, I just performed in a place that there was a burger stand right outside called Sauce Boss. Sauce Boss. Are you related to that at all? Let's see here. Sauce Boss says, do you think Trump and Elon will have a falling out eventually? I mean, it's difficult to say. It seems like they have some corresponding interests right now. Like, they don't mind scratching each other's back because they are both part of the same, like, grift club and con man club. If there is a situation where Trump can throw Elon under the bus without hurting himself, then he 100% will. There are enough buses in the world for the number of people that Trump would throw under if he fucking could. Let's see here. Nature is Art says, my state capital gets more funds than the next 3 cities put together, yet highest dropout rates. What state? Nature is Art? I asked you already, and you have not answered. KVN says, Trump's victory was so perfect. Could it have all been planned? I have not seen any evidence of that. I know that people say that, oh, he's admitted it. I don't think he has admitted it. I think he just is an idiot who says a lot of dumb things. Let's see here. Not Sonny Bono says, once Trump doesn't get credit for something, Elon gets credit for deciding. All right, so let's see here. KVN says, Biden was the best campaign for Trump. I don't think so. I think that the media environment and social media being weaponized against Democrats was the best campaign for Trump. All right, over on YouTube, we got Patrick Schulf saying, I'm just here to say you're awesome. How do you feel about the White House being used as a car lot? Yeah, the fact that people aren't fucking asking me about that here on TikTok, like, what the fuck, guys? Like, what's going on? You really don't give a shit that the President of the United States is using the power of the White House to try to sell Teslas? Like, do you really think that that's the best use of a president's time? Do you really think that presidents should be hyping up companies that support him as opposed to creating a fair environment of competition? Like, isn't that the whole fucking thing with free market capitalism? That the president doesn't pick winners and losers and shit like that? Like, what the fuck, guys? How pathetic is that? That's what our president is doing with his time. How embarrassing. Like, aren't you guys embarrassed by that? Unfucking believable, man. ADD says, let's see here. Would Trump turn tariff to stimulus packages? I don't know what the mechanism of that would be. I know that he could turn it into grift. I know that he could, because companies can petition him to be exempt from tariffs. And he did that in his first term, and he's kind of doing that in his second term already. Let's see here. Not Sonny Bono says, do we know of the Democratic candidates, or are they relatively unknown right now? I mean, I'm not thinking about 2028. There are a lot of people who are wish casting 2028. I'm talking about the special elections in April. If you live in Florida or New York, check that shit out. Or let's talk about the midterms, guys. The work for winning the midterms starts now. And everybody should be voting for Democrats. And everybody should be voting. Like, let's get these voter participation numbers up for the midterms, everybody. Our voter participation peaked in 2020 at 65%. That's pathetic. And it was worse in 2020 because there were something like 8 million fewer voters in 2024 than in 2020. And the midterms and the primaries are even worse than that. So let's fucking get in there, guys. Let's fucking get in the game. You know, if you don't vote or you know somebody who doesn't vote, like, let's chat, man. Let's get into it. I want to make you a voter. And if you're like a centrist or an independent or somebody who's like, sometimes I vote this way, sometimes I vote that way, come at me, guys. Like, let me convince you to vote for Democrats instead, because I can argue this 10 ways from Sundays. They're just better. They're not perfect. They're extremely flawed. And they're a big tent party who has ding-dongs like fucking Nancy Pelosi and great people like our fucking young progressives, your AOC's, your Jasmine Crockett's, your Katie Porter's, your Maxwell Frost's. You know, Shelley, I'm a voter, but I vote red. Why? What is the issue that makes you vote red, Shelley? I am curious about that. Mika says, I am done with the Democratic Party at this point. I wish you wouldn't be. I would love to tell you why that you should. Let's see here. All right. What do you think the likelihood of Trump attempting to run for a third term would be? 100%. It is his express purpose to die in office. He wants to be declared president dictator for life. I would bet the house on it. Whether he gets away with it, what mechanism he uses, whether it's declaring martial law and canceling elections, whether he petitions the Supreme Court to allow for a special waiver, whether he, gets the Republican Congress to, pass some sort of legislation or something like that. I don't know. But that's what he's going to try to do. I guarantee it. Again, I would bet the house on it. Jose Arujo says, Katie Porter is running for governor. You ready? Abso-fucking-lutely. That lady's getting my canvassing. That lady's getting my donations. I am volunteering for Katie Porter for any office that she wants. Man, she is dope as hell. User a whole bunch of numbers says, if tariffs don't work, why would Canada use them in retaliation against us? Because that's how trade wars work. Like just because a country does something that is not going to be good for their citizens does not mean that other country should not be able to retaliate against them. It's not about working versus not working. It's about what's fair. America is trying to cut down on Canadian products being sold in America. Canada has to protect its economy by cutting down the amount of American products that are sold in Canada. It's just as simple as that. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, so the other countries are going to hurt their own citizens? Yeah, but it's not their fault. They're just doing what they can. It would be worse for their citizens if they didn't do this. It would be worse for their economy if they didn't do this. But what's better is not this. What's better is not a trade war that doesn't need to exist. Because, again, Trump is an idiot. Let's see here. Mika says it's time for new political parties. I disagree with that, Mika. Just change the Democratic Party. Vote for different people in the primaries. Let's see here. Okay. Where is that Shelley lady? Shelley said I'm a voter, but I vote red. And I'm still waiting for you to tell me why, Shelley. I asked. Assuming you're here in good faith, Shelley. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. The real Nick Cage 420 says, I'm very pro-life, but I cannot vote for anyone Trump adjacent. How do you swing me your way? Okay, well, let's talk about being pro-life, real Nick Cage. Do you think that it is better? So how pro-life are you? Do you think that women should be allowed to have abortions if it's going to save their life, if it's going to save their fertility, if the child is the cause of rape and incest? Where's your wiggle room here? Or are you just 100% no? Bethany Wester says, thoughts on term limits? I'm for them. Sandy Salsa says, Doge is not cutting to reduce budget, but getting Trump more power in the executive branch. Completely agree with that. Shelley, I believe in products made in the USA. Want a president who's for farmers and ranchers. Well, Shelley, all the farmers and ranchers are getting screwed by Trump right now. I don't know if you've seen the news stories about it, but they're all saying that they feel betrayed because they've got food that is dying on the vines. They can't sell it now because they've been blocked out of global markets. USAID was buying a lot of their food and sending it to starving countries. Now they're not doing that anymore. Because of these tariffs, it is impossible for farmers to plan out their crops for the following year because they don't have the money that they were going to have from selling things to Canada. Is this new information for you, Shelley? I appreciate that, Shelley. I understand that, it's difficult when you're on TikTok because there's a character limit. But, we do what we can here. I got 166 people watching here. I'm trying to get into good substantive conversations with people and drop some good honest knowledge and correct some bad narratives here. If there's ever anything that you want to get into more details on, my DMs are open and you can email me through my website, jarrettberenstein.com. Let's see here. ADD says, I forecast the Tulsi campaign. I sure hope not. She's sus as hell, man. Alrighty. Let's see here. Nicole says, yes, Ro Khanna's new bill. Yeah, everybody that I see bitching and moaning about term limits and shit like that, Democrats have the bill. If you don't like gerrymandering, Democrats have the bill. If you don't like, people in Congress being able to trade stocks, Democrats have the bill. Like, people like the Democratic platform. They just don't connect the Democratic platform with Democrats for some reason. For some reason being misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. Alrighty. So, let's see here. Okay. Oh, so your problem, sorry, we were real Nick Cage. We were talking about, I'll only be fine with allowing to save a mother's life. I'm also happy expanding safety nets. Okay, so let's talk about this real Nick Cage. I think there is room for people like you to exist in America and for people like me to exist in America. Because we already have, in blue states, there are regulations on abortion where, a woman's not allowed to have an abortion if the baby can survive outside of the womb at that moment. So any Republican, whether they are a Trump Republican or not, is completely full of shit on this issue because they are not doing the things that actually decrease abortions. They are not, increasing minimum wage. They are not doing, funding any family planning or sex education. They are not making contraception more available. They are creating the circumstances for there to be more accidental pregnancies and then not giving women the opportunity to get rid of those pregnancies. Additionally, these abortion bans that are happening in red states right now are written in such a way where doctors are scared to give women life-saving abortion care. So regardless of our gulf on what we think abortion policy should be, the Republican Party does not represent your pro-life stance. They want to force women to have babies that they cannot afford to have. And they don't want to stop them from getting pregnant. Like, let's stop them from getting pregnant. That's how you decrease abortions, is by stopping accidental pregnancies, And additionally, if you care about allowing pregnancies for the life and safety of the mother, there are, I want to say 6 women documented now, but probably more at this point, who have died because of these Republican abortion bans. Some of those women were mothers already, and now their children don't have a mom. And it is all the cause of Republican abortion bans. So, the Democratic Party represents a wide swath of people, from Joe Biden, who was himself pro-life but believed in a woman's right to choose, and, you got your AOCs and Jasmine Crockett's who are like, yeah, who gives a shit, So join us, man. Like, vote for responsible politicians who will do the work to actually decrease the number of abortions, in addition to protecting women's lives who have pregnancy complications. Because, again, Republicans don't fucking give a shit about that. In Texas, they are not collecting data anymore on infant mortality and maternal mortality because the numbers are so negative they're showing that their abortion bans are increasing infant mortality and maternal mortality rates. So part of this is like, I can argue this as far as like, it's not really a baby, or just because the baby needs the mom to survive doesn't mean that it has a right to the mom's, efforts, work, labor. But, there's also just the practical applications of this shit, where in red states, gynecologists are fleeing, doctors are fleeing, women are fleeing, because they are not safe there anymore. Doctors aren't safe to perform their duties, and women aren't safe to have children, even if they want to have children. It's not safe there, because what if they have a complication and the doctors tell them, I can't legally give you the life-saving care that you need, so go bleed out in the parking lot, and hopefully it'll get bad enough where I can save your fucking life or your fertility. Shelley says, too many women have used abortion as birth control. It's sad. I don't know if that's accurate, Shelley. I really don't. I've heard Republicans say that stuff in the past. I have not seen any data on that to suggest that. And even if you think that that is a wrong thing to do, you should still not be voting for Republicans because, again, these abortion bans are killing women. It's not good. Like, logistically, it doesn't work. It's not efficient. It's not safe. It's hurting those communities. Try to fucking find a gynecologist in Texas or Idaho now, QC says, why does Elon Musk have so much control in our government? Because he has a lot of money, and the Republican Party is full of con men and grifters who equate having a lot of money with having a lot of power, because he can fund their campaigns or fund their primary challengers or whatever. M. Memps says, yes, I have one. What are you getting out of it? What benefits it adds to your life? I don't know what you are talking about. Let's see here. Patrick Scholes says, I wish I could donate money on YouTube. Can you not? I think there is a mechanism for that. But also, join my Patreon, my man. Robert Castro II on YouTube says, what do you think about Porter for California? I'm for her. I am for Katie Porter for California. She's going to get my volunteer hours and my donations. Alrighty, Shelly, I lived in Florida years ago, and yeah, there were women who would brag about having an abortion. That's what's called anecdotal evidence, Shelly. And so even though you know somebody who did that, that doesn't mean that that is the general thing that happens. One of the things that I try to do with this data as much as possible is try to take sort of like the bird's eye view look on that. It's like, yeah, maybe I know somebody who's like that, but what is the general consensus? It's the reason why I don't throw pot shots at the Democratic Party, because yeah, I'm a progressive, and I think that the things that people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi do are not good, but there are a lot of people in this country who are more conservative than I am, but who are still Democrats. And so, you know, I didn't want Joe Biden to win the primary in 2020, but he did, because there were a lot more centrist Democrats that were voting than progressives like me. Let's see here. User a whole bunch of numbers says, I can give him the numbers, he won't acknowledge them. Shelly says, the data is only as good as the information reported. You know, guys, I don't know what we're talking about here. Like, I've seen all this data. I don't have it at my fingertips. I don't have the numbers or, you know, available to spit out. But I know that this is the case. I know that if you care about this shit, then you should never vote for Republicans. You know? Let's decrease the number of abortions by decreasing the number of accidental pregnancies. How about that? You want to have some legislation where women aren't allowed to use abortion as their birth control? Fine, let's talk about it. That seems like a good compromise to me, you know, depending on what state you're in. Let's work on that. But Republican abortion bans are not that. Republican abortion bans are killing women. They are making women infertile. They are creating, you know, medical health. They're creating medical deserts for people in red states because doctors and gynecologists are fleeing. Alrighty, let's see here. Anya N says, how do we get the left to unify and show up in good numbers? Excellent question, Anya. So here's the thing. What the people who are in power want, what the billionaire class wants, and when I say the billionaire class, I'm lumping in the Republican Party there because they are clearly working together with the billionaire class. That's the reason why Republicans are constantly cutting their taxes and cutting regulations for their fucking giant businesses. And it's the reason why 75% of all billionaire donations went to Republican candidates as opposed to Democratic candidates. So what they want is us not to focus on that. What they want is for us to be fighting amongst ourselves. They want people on the left to think that their enemies are Republicans, or if you are a progressive, they want you to think that your enemy is centrist. If you're a centrist, they want you to think that your enemy is progressives. If you're on the right, they want you to think that your enemy is the left, or trans kids, or immigrants, or poor people, or brown people, or insert, you know, person that we're supposed to be mad at today. So how do we solve this problem of redirecting our attention to the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is in league with them? Well, if somebody reads the news, then they vote for Democrats by a factor of like 80 to 20. So the problem is that most Americans don't get their news from the news, they get it from social media. Or they don't read the news at all. And if you are one of those people, then you are extremely susceptible to the kind of vibe, you know, information sessions that happen just kind of like filter into your brain through osmosis via social media. So maybe you don't know all the things that Biden did during his administration that were great, but you just see people saying online that he's a ding dong and you don't like him. So you're like, all right, well, I'm not going to vote for Biden then, you know? And you know, these, you know, social media environments they're the Wild West. It's 1,000 narratives that are all created and hyped up by billionaires and the billionaires that own these social media companies and shit like that. I don't view these narratives as being organic at all because it just happens to be the kind of narratives that tell people it's not worth it to vote, or that if they are going to vote, they should vote for Republicans instead. And I find that extremely sus. So how do we combat that? We have to do the work. All of us, individually. We have to get out there and talk to people in real life. Posting is not going to do it. Making videos is not going to do it. Because these environments, these online environments, are too easy to manipulate if you have a lot of money and power. And these people do. The billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them do have that power to filter in to our social media feeds the exact kind of narratives that will either convince us to vote for Republicans or to not vote at all. And the people in my comments here who are saying shit like both parties are the same, or nothing ever changes, or voting doesn't do anything, or it's the two-party system that's the problem, so you shouldn't vote because then that will send a message that we want more parties or whatever. All of that has the same effect of depressing Democratic voter turnout. And if you do that successfully by 1 or 2 percentage points, then you get the kind of election that we had in 2024. So again, the only way that we combat that is by doing the work in real life. The one advantage that we have is that there are a lot more of us than there are of them. So if we can activate all the people out there to go out there and talk to their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers, their loved ones, friends, their neighbors, their coworkers, their family members, that's one I was missing, and convincing them to vote. Finding the people who are the gettable voters. We're not talking about turning a hardcore MAGA person into an AOC liberal. We're talking about taking an independent or a Biden-Trump voter, or, you know, people that are, there's so much gray area in people's political beliefs in this country. You wouldn't believe it, you know. Yeah, we got to find those squishy voters, or we got to find those non-voters and convince them to vote. There are 85 million people who could have voted in 2024 and just didn't. And maybe that's because Republican Party made it hard for them to vote by closing down polling locations or creating bullshit voter ID laws, or maybe they just fell for the propaganda that told them that it was better to not vote than it was to vote, or that nothing ever changes or that the parties are the same. We have to get out there and fix those narratives. And if you're too tired to do that, just send them to me, guys. You know, my DMs are open. I do these live streams. That's the whole fucking point. You know, I'm trying to reverse these trends. I'm trying to get people to realize that social media is lying to them, and that when they get into a fight with a MAGA person on the internet, it's not a real person, probably, you know? Like, here's the thing, guys. I'm going to use this shorthand of nobody that you see on the internet is a real person. Because maybe they are a real person, but they just got tricked by non-real persons, like actual Russian bots. Worst case scenario, it actually is a real person, but you're not going to judge them based on the worst version of themselves that they are performing for you on the internet. Because I guarantee you, if you saw that person in real life, they'd be a lot cooler and chiller, even if you don't have the same political beliefs, you know? And that goes for people on the left also. Like, don't believe that centrist that you're arguing with or that progressive that you're arguing with is a real person. Because again, worst case scenario, they are a real person, and you are not going to judge them based on the worst version of themselves, because that's what the internet is. You know, because we're anonymous, we become the worst versions of ourselves. But yeah, who do you think that helps, by the way? So like, let's say I'm a billionaire and I have learned that progressives on the internet acting annoying and saying you're not pure enough to be a real Democrat actually pushes people to the right. And I want Republicans to win. So maybe I use all my billions of dollars and I create a bunch of, you know, troll farms for people to pretend to be leftists and just be annoying and push people out of the party and say you're not pure enough, you know? Be the stereotype that Fox News says that liberals are, and then you will push people away from the Democratic Party. It's so ingenious, isn't it? Doesn't it seem too perfect to not do it, you know? So yeah, don't believe it, guys. If you're a right-wing person and you're talking to a lefty who's annoying you, don't believe it. Don't believe it. That's not a real person, you know? Don't get into fights on the internet. Don't believe that shit. Let's talk to each other in real life, you know? I feel like that's where the progress is going to get made. So yeah, that's the reason why I just talked nonstop for like 10 minutes about that, is just because that's like one of my fucking big soapboxes right there, is how do we solve this problem, you know? Jamal for Gay Thoughts says, I'm not sure if I buy that. If you buy what? Broad Squad says, in 2017, a poll was done, 23% of ours said they would have voted for Bernie. We need progressives. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You know, I like that. But I also think that Democrats in general, even the centrist Dems, are still better than Republicans, because Republicans at their core are like, let's give tax breaks to billionaires. Let's make corruption and bribery easier, more illegal, harder to catch. You know, the Trump administration just shut down some division, I forget if it's in the FBI or the FTC or whatever, that is supposed to track companies as they are made so that they can stop people from using shell companies to hide corruption and stuff like that. Trump shut that down. So now it's easier for people to create bullshit shell companies. You know, they're mass firing veterans, guys. I'm not going to vote for a fucking party that is mass firing veterans. And at the same time, cutting their health benefits. And at the same time, making prices for shit more expensive here, including medication costs. You know? Right. What's my opinion on Scottish independence? I don't know nearly enough about it. Estelle says, I quit using Democrat and Republican in conversation. It has helped a lot. I agree with that, but I do think that it's like, I don't know. One of the frames that I fight against is that the parties are the same or that they're equally bad. And so I don't think that it does us any service to like shy away from being Democrats, because it kind of like falls into the narrative. Like anybody who talks about politics on the left on the internet, they have to caveat everything that they say by saying like, I don't like the Democrats, they're not perfect, blah, 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 but they're still better than Republicans. But the people that talk about politics on the right side on the internet, they just give the Republican Party like full-on tongue baths, like 24/7. So the Democratic Party gets it from fucking every direction. They get it on social media, they get it on left-wing social media, right-wing social media, they get it on centrist media, they get it on legacy media, they fucking get it on right-wing media, obviously. And I just think that's kind of bullshit. You know? Like, can we judge the Republican Party half as harshly as we judge the Democratic Party? No human would ever fucking vote for them. You know, let's talk about the fucking joint address to Congress when, you know, Trump was parading that terminal kid with cancer out in front of everybody and saying, oh, I'm going to make him a Secret Service agent. Isn't that great? It's like, yeah, dude, well, you and your whole fucking party just cut funding for pediatric cancer research. How dare you fucking parade that kid up on stage when you just made it so that him and kids like him have a worse chance of survival? How fucking dare you, man? Bethany Wester says, what news sources do you recommend? I recommend doing a variety of sources. So news aggregators like the Reddit news page or Ground News are good. If you want to be more bespoke about it, you can pick like some legacy, some progressive, and some foreign sources to make sure that you are getting lots of different perspectives. But I like progressive media because progressive media is the only media that is honest about how terrible the Republican Party is, and they do not shy away from criticizing the Democrats when they do shit's wrong, you know? All the progressive media that I was listening to and watching and reading was like, Biden is wrong about Israel, Biden should not have run for a second term, Senator Menendez should absolutely go to jail for corruption, etc., etc. John Smith says, Reddit is a left-wing wacko echo chamber. Don't agree with that, John Smith, not a bit. Let's see here. Tammy Doxy Mama says that's exactly why the Democrats didn't stand up, because they're not falling for that shit. So I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Tammy. All right. They used a kid to parade up there. Yeah, exactly. P. Saki. Ooh, is this Jen Psaki on my live stream? I'm honored to have you here. I gotta say hi to people over on Twitch and YouTube. They're blowing me up. All right, so yeah, let's see here, Jen Psaki. What was your question? Are you in favor of reinstating the Fairness Doctrine? I am, but I worry that it's completely lost all of its teeth at this point. Like, the media environment has become such a fucking hellscape that even if we did reinstate the Fairness Doctrine, like, it would be so easy for a right-wing channel like Fox News to just hire, you know, another Democrat ding-dong who's just, like, really bad at expressing ideas, and then they can parade him out and say, look, we're showing both sides, and this guy fucking sucks. You know, they did it before on fucking Crossfire, you know. Anyways, let's see here what we got going on YouTube. I was talking with some guys at the VA today during one of my appointments. The frontline workers, medical staff seem safe so far, but for now, man, they were like, we just don't know. I work for a different agency in Ruffing. Good news, though, my wife was fired at the IRS and rehired after they all of a sudden realized she was a spouse of a disabled veteran. I mean, that is good news. I'm glad that your wife was rehired. But again, guys, this is the fucking chaos and incompetence administration. They fire everybody that's in charge of their nuclear weapons, then they scramble to try to hire them again. They fire everybody that's in charge of making sure that Ebola doesn't come to America, then they rehire them again. And then the tariffs are on, and then the tariffs are off again. Like, I don't understand how any human being could look at this and say that this is a good system. You know what I mean? Let's see here. All right. Yes, Tammy. I figured that out. I cleared it up. All right, ADD. Real question. Sorry I didn't get to you earlier, ADD over on Twitch. Real question. What do Republicans do correct in your mind? I mean, at this point, nothing. You know, the Republican Party has been on a steady decline for a really long time. And you can point out like singular things that Republican presidents have done good, or singular Republicans that have done singular good things. But as far as the platform of the Republican Party, it's garbage. Like, there's nothing good there. And if there is something good, it's all vague platitudes like "Make America Strong." And it's like, everybody's for that. Like, how are you planning on doing that? They're talking about cutting government services that help the 99% in order to cut taxes for the top 1% because their only fucking thing is still trickle-down economics. And we know it does not work. We know it's utter bullshit. Look at this. We got worse income inequality now than we did during the Gilded Age, which is an age that was named after how bad the income inequality was back then. It's worse now. What can be more gilded than the Gilded Age? What is the name that we come up with for this age and how shitty income inequality is right now? So yeah, Nixon created the EPA. Reagan championed immigrants. George W. Bush said don't demonize Muslims after 9/11. Like, I can pick out little specific things that they did well, but that's not what I'm not here to sane wash the Republican Party. I'm here to say, look at their platform, guys. Look at their platform. Look at their history, or their governing history. Look at red states. They're doing worse than blue states in every conceivable metric. So yeah, there we go, man. We've heard nonstop liberal loving whatnot, so the question above would be balance, LOL. That would be biased, or this would be propaganda over non-biased news. We could call it the disinformation age? Yeah, I guess. Jim Lutz, we could definitely call it the disinformation age. Let's see here. Boomer Kathy says Democrats should run on the economy and lower gas prices because that's all the MAGA care about. Boomer Kathy, so during the Harris campaign and after they lost the election, there were all these talking heads out there that were talking about what did the Democrats do wrong. And I swear to fucking God, because I read all this shit, it was everything that they did. They would say they focused too much on pro-democracy shit. They focused too much on the economy. They focused too much on the cost of living. Because the Harris campaign did everything, And I should also mention the Harris campaign was working. Like, they were in the swing states, and Democrats performed better in the swing states than they did even in deep blue states like New York and California. So yeah, when they talk about the price of eggs and they talk about the rising cost of living, then people yell at them and say, you're not talking about the existential threat of this authoritarian regime that is consolidating power and eliminating checks and balances and removing, non-loyalists from essential government offices and shit like that. But when they talk about that, then Democrats are being too lofty and they're not talking about kitchen table issues and stuff like that. Again, Democratic messaging, it is the Schrodinger's cat of political messaging. It is wrong no matter what they do. So yeah, I don't really truck with taking pot shots at the Democrats for whatever they do or do not do messaging wise, because again, the politicians are better, the platform is better, their governing history record is better, the outcomes are better. So yeah, let's just all be the messengers. Let's not just sit around and wait for the Democratic Party to save us. Let's do the work. Let's be the ones that get this information out there so that people will vote for better politicians instead of worse politicians. Jamal 4 Gay Thoughts says the Dems dropped the ball big time. Their messaging was awful. Again, Jamal, I do not agree with that one tick. Because again, Democrats get yelled at no matter what they do. If they do too much, if they do too little, they're too far to the right, they're too far to the left. I've seen it, man. I've been paying attention to politics for like 15, 20 years. And no matter what Democrats do, it gets chopped up and reinterpreted as a worse version of that thing. And if there's no way they can do that, then the Republicans make some shit up. Let's go back to the 2000 election. Al Gore correctly said, hey, I got a crab on my head. That's pretty cool. Al Gore correctly said that he was responsible for funding the creation of the internet. And that is something that 100% he deserved kudos for, because the internet became this wonderful thing that everybody loves. And then people heard that and they said, Al Gore said he invented the internet. And then everybody made fun of Al Gore for saying that he invented the internet. All right, let's go to Barack Obama. The Affordable Care Act made it illegal for health insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. And what happened after Barack Obama passed the Affordable Care Act? The Republican Party said that there were death panels in the Affordable Care Act, and the Democrats got their fucking asses kicked in the midterm elections because of that. Because Barack Obama had the audacity to try to give more people health insurance. Let's see here. Kamala Harris campaigned with Liz Cheney. She did like 2 campaign stops with Liz Cheney as a way of saying to America that Donald Trump is so dangerous and such a shitty person that even somebody who disagrees with me so much as Liz Cheney is supporting my campaign instead. And then that message got chewed up and spit out and reinterpreted as Kamala Harris is the same as the Cheneys. She is a Republican. She's Republican light. She is not a progressive. She's a warmonger like the Cheneys are. And it's like, guys, do we not see what's going on here? Do we not see how there's no winning if you're a Democrat? There's nothing you can say or do. It's fucking tails I win, heads you lose kind of shit. You know, like, you know, find me where this isn't happening, guys. Let's see here. Jamal 4K Thought says that was a terrible strategy, though. It wasn't. It was polling really well. The number one polled message for convincing people to not vote for Trump was, I actually wrote it the fuck down because I was like, this is very powerful. It was like, Republicans won't vote for Donald Trump. And people in his administration won't vote for him. And the people that worked with him in his businesses won't vote for him. It was saying, it was a permission structure for Republicans to vote for Kamala Harris and Democrats. And all the polling said that it was a winning message, Jamal, for gay thoughts. So yeah, that can be your opinion, but you know, hindsight is 2020. Everybody has a different opinion about this shit. I guarantee you that you're probably thinking that they should have been more progressive or some shit like that. Or whatever strategy you think, there is another person out there who says that they were doing that and that it was the wrong thing to do. So yeah, guys, I'm just begging you to see how this shit is existing on the internet. That you know, no matter what Democrats do, they get yelled at. Democrats never get any credit. Republicans never get any blame. That is also going to be fucking etched on my tombstone, you know? Let's see here. ADD says, I don't know about do nothing correct. The 11-year pardon was for Burisma, so corruption is a slippery slope there. Biden near started World War III, though. He had Zelensky campaigning for Kamala, signing Lockheed missiles with messages for Putin that'll only be dropped on soldiers. So ADD, I see what you're doing here. I understand, like, these are all exactly those false narratives that I was talking about. So Biden did not nearly start World War III. A lot of the global turmoil that was going on during the Biden administration is the cause of fuck-ups and state policy during the Trump administration. That's a much longer conversation than I'm have the strength to do right now because I'm at about a minute, an hour and 7. But that's number one. Number 2 is Zelensky wasn't campaigning for Harris. He went to factories that were producing these missiles to thank them for their assistance in helping him protect his country. So yeah, and as far as like the pardon is concerned, I don't think that president should pardon anybody. I don't have a good argument for why Biden should be able to pardon his family, but I also think that if you're upset about presidential pardons, I got a fucking laundry list of ones that came out of the Trump administration where he pardoned a dude that shot a cop. He pardoned all the January 6th insurrectionists who were fucking beating cops within an inch of their lives. 4 cops died because of that. Let's see here. He pardoned a drug dealer. He pardoned a guy who was guilty of doing war crimes in Afghanistan, who everybody that worked at his unit said, this guy's a fucking monster. He's a homicidal maniac. He belongs in jail. He pardoned Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Him and Rudy Giuliani were selling pardons for $2 million a pop. So yeah, we can all sit around and look at specific problems that happen. You know, this Democrat did this or said that, or this policy is not bad. But if you look at this holistically, it is impossible to not see that the Republican Party is light years worse, and that Republican politicians are light years worse. And I don't mind getting into the specifics on this shit. You know, I'm kind of you know, painting with a broad brush here, but I am quickly running out of steam as it is, you know, as we are bumping up against the end of my live stream here. Let's see here. ADD says, not false. Biden had no plan for a peace talk. No, he did. It's just that Putin was not incentivized for that. ADD says, not false. Hunter worked for Burisma. Yeah, it's fine for him to work for Burisma. You know, did he use his family name to get a job he didn't deserve? Sure, but that's not presidential corruption there. That's didn't even happen when he was in office, you know? Let's see here. So yeah, ADD, it seems like a lot of the things that you are repeating here are narratives that come out of right-wing propaganda specifically. Biden was status quo corruption. U.S. headed towards slow death. Finally, we got a counter to corruption. It was not war profiteering. No. Again, these are all right-wing propaganda narratives, guys. And I'm just, I don't have the energy to undo all this bullshit right now. But I would just say, please get your news from other sources. Yeah. I'll just say this. This will be the last thing that I say. Because you said that Biden was pro status quo corruption. The Republican Party is pro-corruption. Let's take a look at a couple of Supreme Court cases. Ted Cruz had a Supreme Court case that he won where he argued that if he lent himself money for his own campaign, if he wins the election, then people should be able to pay him back the money that he lent himself. That's just corruption right there. That's just legal bribery. And the right-wing Supreme Court agreed with Ted Cruz on that. The Supreme Court also had a case that said that bribery it's not a bribe if it happens after you do a nice thing for somebody. If they give it to you before you do a nice thing for somebody, that's a bribe. That's corruption. But if they give it to you afterwards, that's just a tip. Trump is consistently shutting down parts of the FBI and parts of the Federal Trade Commission that are designed to stop corruption and bribery. Trump coin is corruption and bribery. And the the prosecutor that Biden ousted from Ukraine, he ousted him because he was corrupt. So yeah, you can miss me with that shit, guys. Like, it's night and day here. The Republican Party is pro-corruption and pro-making corruption easier and more transparent. The Democratic parties have the bills to stop this stuff that you think is bad. If you vote for Democrats, they will do those things. Name something, stopping politicians from trading stocks, the Democrats have a bill on it. Ending Citizens United and getting the money out of politics, Democrats have a bill for it. Ending gerrymandering, Democrats have a bill for it. What's the issue here, guys? What is the issue? All right, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for all your questions. I appreciate you guys being here over on Twitch, over on YouTube, over on TikTok. Even if you disagree with me, I appreciate you being here. Please give me a follow. Please give me a like. I appreciate all the support you guys can give me, whether it's the free kind, like liking and sharing and telling your friends how great my live streams are and that everybody should be watching all the time. Or if you can afford to do the financial kind of support, I appreciate that too. I have a Patreon and I have a store. You can find both of those things on my website, jarrettberenstein.com. You can also send gifts on TikTok, on Twitch, and on YouTube. But if you can't afford to do that shit, if you can't afford to be a patron, if you can't afford to buy things from my store or whatever, I'm not going to throw shade, man. We are suffering through a cost of living crisis that is only being made worse by the Trump administration. So thank you again, Republicans, for this continuing the nightmare that we are fucking living under right now. And if you have any questions that I was not able to get to, or if you want to continue some of the conversations that we were having already, my DMs are open. And you can email me through my website, jarrettberenstein.com. My normal streaming schedule is Tuesday through Friday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I often start early, and I often add a Monday because I just really like doing these, and I hope that what I'm doing is pushing the needle in the right direction. I hope that I'm helping. That's part of why I like doing these, is because I feel like they help, maybe. And just my sincere hope and I want to entreat you all to be part of the solution, to do the work, to talk to people in real life, talk to your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbor, convince them to vote, and convince them to vote for better politicians. And for shorthand, I'm going to say that's Democrats, because generally they are. So yeah, guys, there's already great organizations out there doing this work. Indivisible, Run for Something, Vote Save America, or, just follow your favorite resistance hero on social media, and they'll give you the marching orders, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Katie Porter, Bernie Sanders, Adam Conover, he's got the 411 on things that you can do, Call your representatives, be annoying, especially if your representatives are Republicans. Do not let them ignore you, because they are your employee. They work for us. This is our country, this is our democracy, and we have the control here, guys. And so if you want better politicians, go out and vote for better politicians in the fucking primaries, guys. And if you don't vote in the primaries, or you don't do any fucking volunteer work, you don't do any canvassing or anything, and you don't like who the Democrats put forward for the general, well, fucking sorry, but you should have done something about that. But now it is your turn. Now it is your job to vote for the lesser of two evils here. Because again, they're better. They're not perfect, but they're better. And we should all be voting for better over worse. Because better is better and worse is worse. And if we all vote for better, then maybe eventually we get to great. You know? Alrighty. Tim Swag says, do you think Trump is packing? All evidence suggests that is not actually the case. Let's see here. OK Giant says, Democrats are pro-Ukraine, pro-Canada, pro-Mexico, pro-Palestine. Yeah, but we're also pro-America. You know, it seems like Trump is anti every country except for Russia. Let's see here. Can Trump and Elon be removed from office by force? I mean, you're talking about like a military coup there, which is a scary thing to ponder. So let's remove that from our brains. Jay asks, Kendrick or Drake? Kendrick. You know, how can you think that? How can you think it would be otherwise? Do you think it's a huge mistake not to involve Turkey in Ukraine-Russia peace negotiations? That, I gotta be honest, Shaka Schwarzbachheim Kushvish, whatever your name is, that question's a little over my head. The place where I have the most blind spots in policy is foreign affairs. I know a little bit about like the hot spots, you know, like Israel and Ukraine. But yeah, that's a little over my head. Austin, thoughts on Obama putting children in cages and Biden saying he's happy with it? That didn't happen, Austin. Obama was making the best of a bad situation. There were laws in place that said that he had to separate their parents from the kids, and he reunited all of those children with their families. Happy end to a bad situation. The Trump administration, by contrast, purposefully separated children from their parents and then flew them to different places so that it would be harder, difficult, or impossible to bring them back together. And then we lost their parents. So the Trump administration created, for no fucking reason, thousands of orphans for this country to take care of. You know, for somebody who has been accused of being in the Epstein ring, you know, creating a bunch of a population of vulnerable orphan children in this country, it's not a good look, Donald Trump. So yeah, the Biden administration did a really good job of creating a task force to try to reunite those children back with their parents. There were still about 1,000 plus children that they were not able to find their parents for, but they were still working on it. And then Trump got elected, and he dissolved that task force. And his border czar is talking about doing that again now, doing more fucking child separation, you know, so you can miss me with that shit. Austin Biden said he was happy with their conditions. Yeah, he didn't say he was happy that they separated the children. You're doing straw man arguments, Austin. You are being deceptive. You are sus as hell, my man. Miss Jazz, good afternoon to you as well. Yeah, let's see here. We have foreign policy. Don't take Canada war forfeiture. Northern foreign policy is a safe zone. Who is paying this guy to say this crap? Not Kamala. She broke. LOL. Yeah, you guys are just saying right-wing propaganda over on Twitch. You know, there's nothing of value being said over there. ADD, I thought we were really getting into it here, man, but instead you just hook it up with OK Giant and, you know, just spreading the nonsense, spreading the bullshit around. So are you left-wing propaganda? No, I am not. I am delivering accurate news, ADD. And if you think that anything I'm saying is inaccurate, let me know. And I will do my best to correct whatever you believe is inaccurate. Let's see here. Yeah, Austin, I know exactly what you're doing on here. You are not here in good faith, so you are out of here. Okie dokie. ADD, I know you're being sarcastic by saying Yipper's fair and balanced, but I really am. You know? Jim Lutz Music says, meanwhile, all my cues get buried. I'm sorry, Jim Lutz, but you know you're always welcome here. You know that I regularly am answering your questions, Jim. Let's see here. Ring Queen, no, I did not. Again, I just got back from touring. I'm fucking exhausted. So I'll probably have to get back to you. If you hit me up over email, I'll get you back something. But if you don't do that, it's going to take me like at least a week to get that stuff in my noodle. But thank you for coming back, Ring Queen. I appreciate that. All right. So yeah, it looks like we are chilling out over here. The right-wing ding-dongs are no longer engaging with me over there. Let's see here. Just today, appreciate your answers and insights. All you do, man. Cool. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Check back tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have an excellent Wednesday, everybody. And yeah, let's all get through this together, guys. Let's all do the work, and let's all be there for each other. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.